Hi, Misha here, and it's actually a really gorgeous day now after thunderstorms this morning. Kind of thinking what to do. Had some shooting footage from July. If you remember, did a few videos when we had this gun built. This is a Beretta AR70 90 semi-auto, 5.56 NATO 223. Original parts kit on a Troy receiver shell with a Troy US made barrel, and it was put together, finished out by Interfor Group USA down in Texas, a company that actually kind of met up with thanks to Chris Bartacci. So wanted to take this out and test fire it, but whenever we do a test fire, always bring a control gun. And the obvious control gun was my trusty old Beretta ARX-100, the semi-auto version of the ARX-160. This is, of course, not a kit build. It's an import, although these aren't available today. And the reason for this being the control is quite obvious. It fires the same cartridge, even using the same magazines, and is actually the replacement in the Italian military for this gun. Well, as it happens, we really didn't need a control, except for some mag testing. That was gonna fall. Stay there. This ran really well. Good news is if it falls, guys, it's polymer. But it was out, so we have some shooting clips of it. And that kind of got me to think, what can we do for a video? Something topical and important. And so I wanted to kind of talk about 3 commonly held beliefs and kind of use these guns to illustrate if they are or are not true. Number 1, they don't make them like they used to. Number 2, judging a book by its cover, or rather lack thereof, in this case, gun by how it looks. And number 3, wanting something. There seems to be a trend of people only wanting something when they can't have it. So I thought we would kind of use these as a jumping off point to talk about these interesting topics on this very nice autumn day, about 68, 70 degrees out here with a gentle breeze. Sorry. Right before this video, my wife's cat ate the windsock. I already ordered a replacement on Amazon, but it won't be here. Oops. And by the way, we're using a new camera, so see how that goes too. So a little bit of a test run day. With that, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, let's check out the link to the Patreon page. With that, let's get into it. ARX-100. She held open. 70-90, second try with the surplus mag. Well then.
That looks better.
How about that? Let's begin with, they don't make them like they used to. And you know, when it comes to finishing of metal, wood, handcrafting, that's really true. The fit and finish, there's really no comparison to, say, a 1930s Smith & Wesson registered Magnum revolver, truly works of art, or a 1950s Colt Python. But those are commercial at most police guns. Military guns have always been a little more rough and ready. So, speaking to the AR70 90 here, this was actually an attempt, much like the SIG 550, its cousin, to make a gun that was faster, cheaper, and easier to mass produce, as well as being modern. The whole project began back in 1968 with the first version, the AR70 223, being released around 1972. This version would come out in the mid-80s and finally be adopted for widespread service in the 1990s. And this was a stamped steel gun with welding, much like the SIG. So stamped upper, lower, weld spots visible. Look at an FNC, you get it. It was made before pick rails, but it does have this QD carry handle. Not sure how easy or tight. This is a different one. Yeah, I'm not gonna mess with it. They fit quite well. They've got kind of snap sights, upswept charging handle, polymer stock, you know the deal, and of course a bipod. These were high quality guns, but they were still primarily all metal, weighing nearly 9 pounds. And the fixed stock version with a roughly 18-inch barrel was over 39 inches long. They did feed from Stanag mags. This one here, it's the steel pattern. This is a surplus one. It fits in this gun pretty tight, but still fits. High quality gun, but it's a far cry from what it replaced, the BM59, which was based on the M1 Garand. Now let's talk about the ARX-100 / ARX-160. Polymer frame, so yeah, easier to produce, also a lot lighter. It's about 6.5 to 6 3/4 pounds depending on which barrel length. Now standard barrel, like on this one, is 16 inches. They do have longer, shorter, because it's more of a modular barrel. Of course, now we have pick rails for accessories. Overall length set up like this is a little over 36 inches with the stock out. Of course, fold it up, you save even more. And that has an adjustable length of pull. Short, but there. So it's shorter, lighter, more accessible. And of course, it's fully ambidextrous. It's one of the neat parts about this gun. Whereas the one down here, carry handles, actually handy. It does have some nods towards being ambidextrous, like the selector on either side, and the kind of notion of the upswept charging handle, but it's far from there. As to the fact if you like the stamped and welded steel with a paint finish, or the more modern, mostly polymer with a phosphate where necessary, that's kind of up to you. But I do think, well, they both have nice quality barrels, cold hammer forged chrome line, but I think by the 1980s, we were kind of past that time of artisan craftsmanship, and we were getting into the era of mass production. And I think it was kind of an awkward period. It was really before CNC tooling was prevalent. Even what existed was very expensive, and wages were going up in Europe and soon America. I often kind of look at the late 80s and 90s and maybe early 2000s as kind of the lower point of overall manufacturing quality, especially post into the Cold War, where there were so many drastic budget cuts. And with the AR70-90, they bought over 120,000, so they had to come in at a price point. I do think they're excellent guns, but I think they do show their age. And I do think modern guns like this, overall, they're just as good, if not better quality. Plus, they're much easier to manipulate and customize for the modern user. And these have been in the Italian military. The first ones were sent over in 2008, and it was officially adopted around 2012, replacing the AR70-90, but it's an ongoing process. Ultimately, they'll probably acquire at least 60,000. By this point, it's mostly done, but it seems to do well in service. We'll move on. Now J-Row with ARX.
That's clean. I like that.
So what'd you think?
That's super clean. It's real flat. Follow-up shots are easy. It would take me a longer video to kind of get into some of the aesthetics and ergonomics, but it's a comfortable shoot. I like it a lot.
So that was kind of J-Row's quick take. He's behind the camera, so I'm sure if he changes his mind, he will let us know. So kind of judging a book by its cover. Now, that's not completely not worthwhile. Obviously, you can tell quality by the welding, by the finish. And I think guns like this, now this is, of course, a kit build. So it's going to have the kind of waviness of welding on stamped steel, hand finishing, that kind of thing. But the original parts, like the hand guards, they speak for themselves. Again, this is made past the era of individual craftsmanship. This was into the era of mass production assembly line, and that's not a bad thing. That's how most things are made. And it does kind of show that. And it's kind of exactly as it's written on the tin. It looks like a very conventional gun, thick stock, very to the novice M16 looking with a bipod, and that's kind of how it does. It's a soft recoiling gun, long stroke.
Looks more like an FAL to me.
I don't know, I've never seen an FAL. All the features. I do like the safety, the larger ambi paddle. It's kind of nice. And I do find the folding trigger guard nice down. It's a conventional gun, and it looks conventional, and that's not a knock against it. A lot of your guns adopted right after the end of the Cold War, the HK G36 comes to mind, kind of have that evolutionary improvement versus revolutionary improvement, again, because of the budget cuts. Looking at this one, let's be honest. Yeah, it's the pregnant guppy. And just by the look of it, a lot of people were turned off, and I get it. It's an unconventional, it's one of the most unconventional non-bullpup guns that have been on the American market. But that's just looking at it online. If you were to hold one, things improve. This weird handguard actually is quite comfortable. And yeah, it does have a short throw stock, but that can be worked with, frankly. Now, I've said many times, I'm not a favor of this butt plate, this kind of curve in and plastic checkering. I really would like a rubber butt plate, so I'll ding it there. But I really do like how purely ambidextrous it is, because that's not just for lefties. And you have actually 3 mag releases, and I love the quick change barrel system. It's great for cleaning, quick disassembly, or if you want to do an SBR, a barrel swap, because Beretta offered a 10.5-inch barrel kit for a while. And of course the rails are modular. Now it's not the most modular gun, but it's there. So just handling it, things get better. One thing I will say that I noticed, a lot of people picked up the Beretta ARX-160 22, the 22 long rifle version, at a gun shop and said it felt chintzy, cheesy, kind of squishy plastic. And then they assumed that the ARX-100, the 5.56 version, was built out of the same plastic. That is wrong. This is a durable gun, and they've been on the market for coming up on a decade now, a few years out, but close to it. The polymer's holding up great. It's just that the 22 was built from actual plastic. This is built from reinforced military polymer. So if you judged one just based on the ARX-160 22, that was a big disservice. So, there's that. Kind of helps offset the looks. But as J-Bro pointed out, the proof in these is how they shoot. They're a lightweight gun, which typically kind of knock the crap out of you. But this has a unique gas piston system. It's a short stroke, but the piston moves very little. It almost always has constant contact with the bolt carrier, which means there's not that whack, that thump. It's a very smooth gun. And people grump about the trigger. When you're just sitting here dry firing it, maybe it's not great, but when you're actually shooting, you don't tend to notice that. I mean, you might notice a truly horrible trigger, a gritty one, but mine at least is not gritty. That's actually what won Jay over back in 2014. I bought one of these around Christmas, and he made fun of me. Everyone did, even I did. But after we shot it, he bought one, and that tends to be the experience. These are one of these guns that people will dismiss and poo-poo until they shoot one, and then they want one, and that's kind of enough said there. So while I will say that judging a gun based on how it looks is only natural and gives you an initial impression, a first impression, just like with human beings, don't only go by that. At least handle it, and if you can, don't make final judgment until you shoot it. To be fair, the reverse happens too. There are some guns that look amazing and even feel amazing, and they shoot for crap. But luckily, that's not the case for this Beretta here. It's a true import, so it's great. And I have to say, I'm just going to fold this because it's easier. Considering that they're building from a parts kit in used condition with a US barrel receiver, I think Interfor Group does a really nice job with these. The bolt throw is very smooth. I'm going to hold the catch down so it won't stay open. And the selector moves well. And the semi-trigger is quite nice. And there's no rattle or things. It fits actually tighter than a Swiss import. And the bipod does fold up into the handguard without wiggle wobble. Now, because the flash hider is part of disassembly, it can be a little loose, but this one's quite tight. Grenade cutoff still there, and your 2-position regulators there. So given the limitations of a kit build done in a garage by a small-time FFL 07, yeah, again, I think you can accurately judge this gun based on its looks too, for better or worse. If you like that kind of rough and ready military look, been there, done that, it's great. If you're expecting a factory new Italian gun, you probably don't want to get into kit builds because they're always a little bit of a project. I mean, again, you're making parts from different eras and different generations try to work together, and either you're into projects or you're not. Kind of like people sometimes like building, refreshing, restoring a classic car. Some people, they don't want to do that. Other people, it's the best hobby in the world, including Fujiro's father. So, yeah, point number 2. Let's move on. Last of the surplus mags for the 7090.
That looked good.
Yeah, that's for, all the surplus but that one seemed to do fine. One quick sidetrack here. The mags. Wasn't sure of this before we really got them, but they are the same between the AR7090 and the ARX-160, the military guns. Now, I'm not going to say a mag made in, say, 1995 looks the same as a mag made in 2015. There can be small generational changes, but let's say a late production 7090 mag is exactly the same as an ARX 160 mag made around the same time. Steel body, follower. They're not as heavy as some, which is a good thing, but they're not alloy either. And this was confirmed by Beretta USA themselves. They said, the product numbers are the same. So just wanted to point that out because it was something that kind of came up in conversation over time. With that, let's move on to our third and final point. Let's try that somewhat janky surplus mag in the ARX, see what it does. Oh, Mikey here likes anything.
Yeah, likes it.
So, people's tendency, mine, probably yours too, to not want something until it's not available. I think it's just human nature, but if you're aware of it, you can kind of actively fight against it and actually pick up things when they're freshly on the market, being imported or made. That's almost always the time they're the cheapest. So holding the AR7090, 2 things to say. The original AR70 223 back in the 80s, not many came in, and it was a bit of a sleeper gun. Even though I wasn't old enough to buy rifles in the 80s, because apparently 12-year-olds aren't supposed to do that. When I was old enough, you could still get a pre-ban for not much money. At a time when pre-ban SIGs were going for $10K, you could still get a Beretta for under $2. Even BM59s were $3. They were pretty undervalued for a long time, but now the mind has, the collective mind is aware, and now prices are $5,000 and up, unfortunately for people. But it is a very small number that ever came in, and people really didn't want them until prices started to shoot up on the AR-70 223 guns. And to a lesser extent, those numeric AR-70 223 parts kits. I should also point out, speaking of kits, that while the barrels are very similar between the 70 and the 70-90, the receivers totally different. Only saying it here because people ask, no, you cannot use an AR-70 223 receiver to build an AR-70-90. It just won't work. So let's fast forward to about 2018 and these parts kits. They came in, Century was the primary importer, Apex was one of the big distributors, and at first they were quite affordable, $400. Soon they would go to $450. That wasn't bad. And then they would be about $450, but they'd be missing the bipod or the carry handle or both. And people didn't generally buy them because you couldn't get receivers, 80%, 100, whatever, or barrels. To a lesser extent, since it's a 223 barrel. A lot of people passed it up. Then, as usually happens with kit builds, it takes time. 80% receivers from Troy and barrels came out. Typically, the parts to build up kits do come out 1-2 years later. Look at the Set MELs. By that point, though, the kits were mostly not available on the primary market, and of course, then you go to secondary market like Gunbroker, Arms International, and you're at 800, 900, 1,000 plus. I don't know if any more will come in, but I doubt they'll ever be 400 again. So if you're wanting to do a build, buy the kit when it comes in, store it well, stick it in a trunk, forget about it. That's exactly what I did. Bought a few of these back in 2018 because I knew I'd want one, and I just waited for all the stuff to kind of come together, and 4 years later it did. And I'm damn glad I did that, and I've had more than a few friends hit me up for my kits to get them built. In fact, this gun will probably be going to just one such a friend next week. Now, when it comes to true imports, the basic stays the same. We've already talked about how the ARX-100 looks and the perception. These came to market around $1,400, and they didn't sell. Part of it was the trigger. People didn't like it. Part of it was the shorter charging handle. But these are all those things that made it a military gun. Even when Beretta dropped the price to $1,200 and then $1,000, they were kind of slow movers. So they dumped the remainder on the market for $800, $900. And then people started to kind of notice, but even then they didn't just sell out instantly at nearly half price. But of course, once the final stocks sold out a few years ago, then people started to really want these. And I think by that point their reputation was starting to get out. People had been owning them, shooting them, possessing them, doing things with them. And also the aftermarket started to catch up. Mine's pretty stock because I wanted mine to be military. But now, if you don't want that, there are ways to get a larger charging handle. There are even ways to have a longer buttstock if you need it. And because of the very easily removed barrel, the idea, the option for additional calibers, barrel lengths is always there. Much like with the parts kit situation, give the secondary market a couple of years to catch up with a new gun. So people really only started to appreciate these after they were no longer available, and you guessed it, secondary market, Gunbroker, Arms International, Auction Arms, whatever the website is, prices were well over $1,000 and then well over the original price of $1,400, and I don't know where they're at today, but I do know that Beretta considers the ARX-100 to be a commercial failure. I would be exceedingly amazed if they ever brought over more of these. And if they did, I would imagine it'd be a very small batch built for maybe contract overrun parts. People are wanting the ARX-200, the 7.62 NATO version. Maybe they'll do it, but with their experiences with the 223 version, I don't think so. So again, if you are at all interested in something, and you do have the money, if you don't go into debt, pick it up. You might love how it shoots and be glad you did. If you aren't really familiar with it, if you don't really like it, throw it in the back of the safe for a couple of years until they disappear. Imports always disappear. Sell it. No shame in that. You tried it, you know you didn't like it, and maybe you'll make a couple of bucks to boot. Let's wrap things up. Well, guys, appreciate you kind of hanging out with us on this nice day. Feel free to tell me how wrong I am about my opinions in the comments. Nah, it's fine. It's just opinions. I was actually joking with J-Ro during intermission, doing things, saying only I could take some random shooting clips, not really know what I'm going to do, and then ramble on for 30 minutes. But I do think these are kind of fun points to talk about. And for anyone who's a shooter, collector, things to be mindful of. I'm not one that likes regrets, so if I'm interested in something and I can afford it, I'll pick it up. If I can't, I won't worry about it. I've been able to get a lot of my whale guns over the years, and this one, if it wasn't a white whale, it was a gray whale. But maybe like the French FAMAS, I don't ever think I'll own that. But if kits ever come in, I'll buy them, even if I don't know who in the hell's gonna make receivers or barrels, because worst case, I can always flip the kits later on Gunbroker, I guess. But happy with this gun. I've had 4 or 5 built now. So this one's going out to a friend soon. It's a nice compliment. Of course, it's not as nice as the pre-band guns or a SIG, but it's better than nothing. The ARX, man, what a surprising gun. I mostly bought it because I found a good deal on Christmas and the wife was out of town and I wanted something new to play with, and it is different. Plus, I didn't really have the kind of foregone bias of looking at it online. Can't imagine why. But I definitely grabbed one and thought, that's a funky feeling gun. But at the same time, this is a gun that probably comes out to the range more often than just about any other gun over the years. I just kind of feel the need to bring the ARX out at least twice a year, which with all the new guns we usually have to mess with, that's saying something. And that's why I wanted J-Ro to try it out, and he liked it. Probably why we've kind of gotten on and shooting stuff for 2 decades is fundamentally we have very similar tastes. Not identical, but similar. So, yeah, I'm glad that I've been able to share this with friends and they enjoy it as well, because at the end of the day, that's what both of these guns have done. The ARX has been primarily a great gun for people as a shooter. It's one that you can take out and people just really enjoy, no matter age, height. The AR70, 90, a little different. I know Chris Bartacci was just tickled pink when he found out someone who could build one of these for him. Having one of these in the collection delights a lot of, well, collectors, because it's been the missing link. We've had Italian Grands, BM59s, the original AR70, the ARX, but we haven't ever had, even in parts kit form, an AR70 90 until now, thanks to Troy and Interfor Group here. And I guess we have to say thanks to Century for bringing over the kits. Now, the company that will go unnamed in Italy that demilled these did a horrible job of demilling them. They were rough with them. So if you get a kit and things like the dust cover are bent, that probably didn't happen in service. It had probably happened when they demilled it from the receiver, because they used a screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, just to pry it off. They were also very rough with some of the rear sights. Like this one's got a little bit of a bend in the protector, but that's kind of what protectors are for. Keep the actual sight from getting knocked about. At least the furniture, aside from small scuffs and scrapes, is nice. And of course, new barrel, so that doesn't matter. But that's probably the biggest grump with these is not the condition of the initial gun, but how they were treated afterwards. Well, guys, hope everyone's having a great day and month. Again, feel free to post below. And if you'd like to help support the channel, check out the link to the Patreon page. And I hope you guys are enjoying Fox and J-Ro being on the channel and all that as we go forward. This is Misha, and we'll all catch you very soon next time. AR70, last mag of the evening. Alrighty.
Hey, maybe onto something.
I think so. Hi.
Hello.
Is it time to eat yet?